Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the Space and Missile Defense Symposium, day one of the Tec-Talk Podcast in partnership with iHeartMedia. We are here live at the Von Braun Center, and I am joined today by Mark Stafford with Delta Solutions and Strategies. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me today.
How are you doing today? How are you enjoying Huntsville?
No, I'm having a great time. Just got here yesterday morning. I spent a lot of time down here. I live in Colorado, and then but we have a division of our companies based here in Huntsville, so I'm here quite a bit.
I got you. So I think I would love for you to talk a little bit about your background, who you are, and what your company does.
Absolutely. So I'm the CEO and then part owner of Delta Solutions and Strategies. We're based out of Colorado Springs. I sold 70% of the company about 20 months ago to Bowhead UIC, which is an Alaskan Native corporation based out of Barrow, Alaska. Our company, primarily our biggest customers are U.S. Space Command and the Space Force. We do advisory services and technical engineering support. We also do some operations and maintenance of military facilities, radars, and telescopes. And then I own some intellectual property that we do work for missile warning, missile defense, training, and exercise support.
Sounds like all super intriguing and engaging work. Are you prior military, or have you been in the private sector the whole time?
No, I did 4 years active duty in the Air Force as a space officer.
Okay.
And then I did another 24 in the reserves, doing space operations, RDT&E, and acquisition support. So I retired a few years ago.
So you mentioned earlier you do a lot of work with, if I'm not mistaken, Space Force and Space Command?
Correct.
So with the transition of the headquarters of Space Command to the Huntsville, how is that affecting the current work and opportunities that you guys are looking at here in Huntsville? I know they've moved about 500 people so far.
They have. A lot of the contractors haven't moved yet. Yep. We're still supporting the mission in Colorado Springs. We have a little bit of support here. So no direct impact day to day to my employees. We'll see that happen over the next 1 to 2 years as we transition more of the contractors down here. But we've had a lot of people express support who want to move down to Huntsville. We've a bunch of the guys have been coming down here already, house hunting and getting to know the area. Obviously, a lot of our guys who are former Army have been stationed here before, well familiar. But a lot of the guys who are prior Air Force, Space Force, this is a new area to them.
So you mentioned you guys are doing, of course, some consulting, but also some technical engineering work. Could you talk a little bit more in depth about the work that you guys are doing and how it is impacting the warfighter?
Yeah, so some of our work, we do some intelligence support for U.S. Space Command. We also write requirements for new weapon systems. And then we man the operations center for Space Command, so doing direct support to the warfighter every day there. And then we do all the intel and cyber support, providing those that comm networks across the world for U.S. Space Command and the Space Force.
So are with the acquisition, kind of acquisition life cycle changing dramatically over the last several years, you go through different phases of how things are on contract. Is with the so much change over the last year and a half within the government, how have you guys weathered it? And any words for companies that are struggling? Because there's a lot of companies that got hit hard the last year and a half, and some that did not. How malleable, or what would you say is probably some strong asset or strong assets of a company that can weather the storm when the contracting goes awry?
I think your biggest thing is you need to be adaptable. You have to anticipate what's going to happen over the next few years, keep up to date on current events, what's going on, Department of War. But most of all, understand your customer, know where they're heading. And that's going to change. I mean, you're seeing every 6 months, something's changing. OTAs, rapid acquisition cycles. And if you're not ready to adapt and you don't have the ear of your customer, you don't understand what the warfighter needs day to day, you're really in trouble.
Yeah, no, I agree. We industry, I think, has got the note from the government of, we're no longer going to be asking you to, the government's no longer going to be asking us to do some R&D and develop something over 4 or 5 years. It's like, hey, we want a commercially available solution or something that's 75 or 80% complete. What you mentioned, OTAs, commercial solutions openings. What is, how have you guys taken those contract vehicles and been successful in doing so? I know it's a lot of areas, a lot of companies have questions like, how do I compete in this? and especially from a commercial solutions opening. The government wants commercially available solutions. How are you guys handling that?
Yeah, so probably the best discussion would be around my intellectual property and our software. So on that, we're constantly updating our tools. We're going to events like this, going to different conferences. When the government has open houses or industry days, going there, listening, bringing the customer in to see our tools. So our life cycle on our IP, we're constantly doing rollouts. We're down to the weeks now looking at that. Hey, we saw this new hypersonic, or we saw these new drones, and how do we integrate that into our software quickly? Is that, we're playing with AI now, stuff that's we can load on our system at different classification levels. And how can we use that AI to faster adapt the code, to model a different hypersonic or different type of missile that we're seeing out there or that's projected to come. You can't wait around and wait for these requirements to come. Former process with JSIDs, right? And now, as they're fastly evolving these requirements, you're going to need to, keep up to that, speed of what's happening in the world right now. I mean, look just like what you're seeing in Ukraine or Iran, and how quick the drone technology and anti-drones coming too. How are you going to evolve to that? And do you know what's going on? So that's the biggest thing I tell my guys is don't slow down, go faster, right? And you're not going to be, in some cases, you're going to have to evolve how you test things. You're not going to be able to go, hey, I'm at TR level 2. Next year, I'm going to be at 3. 2 years, 4, right? You're going to have to speed to 7, 8, 9 if your customer's going to want to buy your tools, right? And the most important thing is, what's the difference for the warfighter? That's the end goal, right? And you got to focus on that from day one.
I want to talk about that. I think that's a hurdle that a lot of companies struggle to take a great capability that's at a low TRL and get it from a TRL 3 or 4 to a 6 or 7. That aspect tends to be difficult because a lot of it involves the government providing an R&D space, a lab to test it in.
Seed funding, yep.
What is some of your guidance as a president and CEO? How have you tailored your engineers that are working for you to keep that in mind? Of how to get this?
Yeah, here's our model. So we're doing all physics-based modeling, right? We're looking at these different missile types, and we're doing space to ground, right? Space to space, space to cislunar, right? Ground to cislunar. So I have a group of physicists who help with the software and can write the code, but they're not operators, right? They have masters and doctorates in physics, right? Or math or something like that. So then we bring in warfighters. So there's some formerly Guard Reserve, active duty. We bring them, and the team's infused with a mix of operators, logistics people in some cases for a few things, and then physicists. So those physicists can sit down with someone who was a telescope operator, radar operator, space operator, at U.S. Space Command, and then they can sit down and ask questions like, hey, how does this radar really work? How does this telescope really work? And then our guys can quickly model that. Then the former operators can sit down and go, no, that's not really how it would work. You don't have this much time. And that's kind of how we do it. We got to think of it as a team. Like what I think I see a lot from both former reserve jobs who are doing space acquisition is we'd see these companies come in with some tier level 3, 4, and then they refuse to hire operators. They didn't want to spend the money. So then they develop this and they go, this is exactly how this is going to work. And then boom, you put it in front of 2 operators, right? And they're like, no, this is not going to work in the real world. So I think that's what I see a lot of these startups. I used to volunteer down at the Catalyst campus in Colorado Springs at the incubator there. And I talk to these young companies and they'd be like, 3 to 12 people. And that's the first thing I tell them. Hey, do you have it? Can you consult any of the operators? Have you talked to them? Hey, I know Space Force has sent them over here for a few hours or 2 days. But I go, do you have anyone on staff? And like, oh, they didn't even think about it. I think the engineers and physicists think they know the answer, but sometimes how the real world reacts and what happens day to day aren't the same thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. Another aspect of the process of getting your capability in the hands of the actual operators, how important that is. On the other spectrum is once you are able to make that connection with the government and get access to the data, or however you need to test, let's say a UAS, so you're testing their counter UAS system out in the range, is how important is it to understand what the requirements are?
Yeah, you have to have a deep understanding of those proved requirements or how they're going to evolve in the future. You have to be willing to ask questions. Sometimes you'll think it's a straightforward requirement, but there's 4 or 5 underlying requirements that aren't written down, right? That you really need to understand. I used to sit on source selections. I was an FFRDC when I got out of the military, and I'd sit there, and a lot of times we'd notice the defense contractors, I almost thought they weren't asking enough questions. They thought they understood what we were trying to acquire, but they had a fundamental misunderstanding. And when I worked in this research lab as an FFRDC, we would actually go out and operate satellites using experimental ground systems. And I would say, hey, I'm here for you 8 hours today. We're going to do 8 satellite contacts. We're going to contact 3 different types of antenna systems. And they always pretended they knew. And then I'd go, hey, I want you to sit there and operate the satellite. And then they'd sit down and the engineers would like start shaking a little bit.
I don't know what to do.
Yeah, and it would freak them out. And they're like, the 8 minutes went by too fast. And then I'd take over, right?
Yeah.
And, we had these old, we call them taco satellites, test and check out. And it was actually pretty funny for me to sit there like, I'm on a live antenna on a live satellite. I'm going to put it up and we're going to see if your software works. Yeah. And I'd be there to stopgap it, but it was pretty funny. Like, so again, they'd be like, I really didn't understand what you were telling me. Yeah. I'm like, you got to ask more questions, or hire some operators who just retired, or who are on the reserves and did this part-time on the weekends. You know?
I think that's a huge aspect is sometimes the hurdle is not the contracting. It is the government now wants to see companies taking risks, because the government's taking risk right now.
Yeah, every day.
And if you as a company are not willing to take some risk, and let's say the risk is hiring someone for X amount of dollars and with no work in mind, they're going to be some overhead. They're going to be doing R&D work for you, developing prototypes. Like, that's a risk, but that is what the government wants to see right now.
Correct. They want to say your knowledge. Do you understand what they're looking for? Sometimes the government, may not know where they're headed, right? Some of these companies have a way better idea how the technology can be used, where AI is going, machine learning, all that stuff. So you have to be able to invest in your product. So like our IP, I was constantly investing my own dollars. I actually didn't go after a lot of R&D dollars. I didn't go after go to AFWorks or SpaceWorks or that kind of thing. I just invested my own money because I knew where I wanted to take the tool. Sitting down with my own guys, having that background, or just constantly talking to the customer. So I literally didn't do that. It was all internal funds to fund where the tool went. It's just a little different approach, but that way I could control where I wanted it to go.
Yeah, because the other avenue, what you're talking about, if you don't fund it internally, you can go through like the SBIR portal, go to the phase 1s, phase 2s, of course, but that's a limited scope. The government's kind of told you, hey, we want this, and you can't guide it.
Correct.
You're kind of stovepiped to a certain degree.
I never took a SBIR because that drives your tool a little bit where it's going, and then it might be a little harder to adapt. Like, you have some of these companies who live off SBIRs, right? Yeah. That's what they do. And your goal is to get that SBIR phase 3, right? Yeah. We all know that in this industry. So I was like, hey, why am I taking $100,000 if they're going to steer my code or the solution set to this one specific task? Yep. I'd rather pay that, take that internal IRAD funds and steer the tool where I think it needs to go. Now I'd go read the SBIRs to get an idea, right? Oh, yeah. And then we just did it all internally. So we'd use that, our services side of the business, to help fund the intellectual property side, if it makes sense.
No, it does. It makes total sense. And you want to it sounded like you wanted to provide strategic direction.
Correct.
To where your guys were going. A question I had earlier, I couldn't remember it. Now it came back. Yeah. As you were talking about from a software / IP data side of the house, is a lot of companies will get selected for a contract, and a lot of it will have some proprietary data, either in a software bundle. You want to own your IP, et cetera. So let's say, I think a lot of listeners don't understand this process. I think from what we've talked about, I think you do. I want you to explain.
I know where you're going, yeah.
What basically is you offer a solution, and then the government wants you to iterate. So could you talk a little bit about how companies can still retain your IP, but iterate on that software once it's handed over to the government? Yeah,
so I've had an IP attorney since day one, right? Involved in everything we do. He's on call, two of my guys down on my mod sim team, the actual physicists, and some of those guys, a couple of the operators. And so as we do this and we get on a contract, or they mod a contract, every time I run that by my IP attorney, I'm going through a sole source right now. It's happening this week, next week. But he's been involved in day one. He sits down and talks to the legal representation on the government side, so we both clearly understand that I own the IP, underlying IP. And the best way, like a good analogy is, let's say I own Microsoft Office. Great example, simple one. And then, hey, this customer wants Excel. This customer wants Word, right? This company wants a different application. I'll say, hey, I have 10 different applications. Everyone can use them. You're investing in this one, this one, this one. I tell the government, hey, this is a good thing. Each one of you is help me build an application. Everyone can use them. And of that Excel, that customer, when I explain to them, I go, hey, you paid for 10% of Excel and I gave you Office. And I use that analogy a couple times to customers recently, and they go, we got it. We know where you're headed. Let's talk about that as we build the next contract. So that's kind of, you got to give them analogies on the government side and go, this is where we are. But I always specify that we own the underlying code. And then most recently, we got the direct award, the notification out on sam.gov. They actually put something on sam.gov that we own the underlying code.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, I can't foot stomp it enough. Even at TechMaster, we have our IP attorney, data rights. We talk to them all the time when we're doing something. It's super important because you don't want to get caught up in something where you've allowed the government to take control of the code and stuff like that.
So a good way to handle that for these startups, what they should also do is every time you're investing in the code, track all those hours, track the money you spend on hardware, track the money you spend on software. It doesn't have to be down to the penny. But when you go back to the government later on and talking about data rights, go, hey, when I was developing this last year, I spent $522,000. Part of it was my facility. I bought all this hardware. I bought all this software. And then make sure you tell your customer, your primary or secondary customer, I also have 6 other customers. Here's who I can tell you who they are. And then here's the money I've invested versus the government. And then when I track that down, that helps them go through and assert your data rights. Does that make sense?
Exactly. No, it does.
But track that. You have to track that information.
You explained it well, and that's something that we learned is tracking is huge, because if something comes up, you can say, nope, this is where we spent this money doing this task, et cetera.
And these 3 FTE that I pay for, I had my own internal IRAD. Each one of them cost me $250,000 load. I'm just making up a number. Loaded. So that was $750,000 from me. They sit in my facility. They've never been on a government facility.
One of the this will kind of be the last topic of discussion is you've been in this industry for a while.
A long time.
And for the longest time, there was a lot of vendor lock. There was not a lot of sharing across the different agencies, not just like, let's say, DIA, DHS, like DOD, but within the Department of War, Army, Navy, Air Force, all of them. Is at some point, do you think that we are on the right path to be able to start leveraging capabilities that the Air Force has, that you develop? Let's say you develop some capabilities for the Air Force doing some radar analysis. And then, of course, that's applicable in other areas of the Department of War.
Correct.
The Navy's doing it. The Army's doing it. How are you guys trying to use existing capabilities with slightly customizing it to the needs of another branch?
Yeah, when we develop our software and our IP, we try to be agnostic. I'm trying to make sure this isn't a STRATCOM tool. It isn't a Navy tool. So our models in there will have satellites from the Space Force. We've had MDA systems in there. We have TIPI-2s. We have Army radars, Navy ships, Aegis Ashore or something. We're trying to have all those different things developed as we go from we develop the code. That way any customer can use it. And then kind of encourage the other customers. Like our biggest customer is STRATCOM from day one, plus starting 20 years ago. But then it's kind of been word of mouth. We haven't even done that much sales because people would go out with STRATCOM in an exercise because it's joint, right? Yep. And they would see it, and the Navy guys are like, I want that. And they go, I saw you had one of our systems in there. And I'm like, yeah. And then the Army came up, and then they wanted to see it. Then MDA. So some of our IP is, we've developed IP over the years that can help translate those different missile warning, missile defense data coming in from all these different sources, and we're the only ones who do that IP in the U.S. Yep. We've even had the FFRDs approach us to help them out, right, in the past. Yep. Lockheed's called us, Boeing, and all them. So we try to be agnostic about that. We try to keep the system as open as possible and making sure we're integrating all the different weapon systems. The hardest thing you run into, and I was working on this before I retired a little bit out of the Pentagon, is overclassifications is what's killing everything. Yeah. And General Saltzman is retiring right this week. That's one of his big things. Going forward. was how do we declassify data, especially in the joint environment. I think that's what's holding all these systems back and how we can't talk to each other. Like you said, you have silos, right? You got all these silos, and then those silos are further siloed by classification, right?
Yep.
And that's one thing, government and contractors, government, civilians, we all have to work together.
No, I agree. I think the last question I would have is events like this, Space Missile Defense Symposium, maybe tell the listeners of how important it is to pick a select few of these to come out, network, building relationships. How important is it? And what can you stress to the smaller companies that are trying to work with the large primes?
Yeah, so I was that guy, right?
Yeah. I know.
So I took over this company when it was like 28 people, and now we're 500, 130 million, whatever.
Yep.
Network.
Yep.
Walk around here, speed date. If you looked at my calendar right now, it would just be like every 30 minutes there's a meeting, even in our size. And I'm part of Bowhead UIC now, $1 billion company. I'm booked all day. I won't be in the booth more than 20, 30 minutes a day. If someone comes up to the booth, they're going to refer them, text me and go, hey, you need to come back to the booth. There's a company. But just go out there and meet as many people as you possibly can. You don't know where the opportunity is always, where it's going to pop up, right? And if you don't know someone, go up and shake their hand, go up to the booth and say hi. And tell them what you do, learn what they do, get a business. It's old school. Get a business card, right? You can get an electronic one, right?
Yeah.
But go around and do that speed dating. It's really important because people will remember you. They'll remember what you talked about. And I was just talking to someone else, asked me the similar type of question, one of the companies in here. And I said, if you're running your company, know everything about your company. Know the finances. Know the business development piece of it. Know where your technology is going if you have IP. If you have that and you can talk intelligently like that about your company and you're passionate about it, people are going to see that. And they're like, hey, that's someone I want to work with. Yep. And ethics and integrity are everything too.
Yep, and what you said, the network, it brings me back to that phrase of people do business with people do business with people they like.
And they trust. And those are the things. They want to work
like and trust.
Yep.
And super, super happy you came on the show. We always do 2 questions at the end, more personal, more funny questions. Okay. Where's the best place you've traveled to for work or personal? And what is your favorite sports car?
All right, my favorite sports car is a Porsche 911.
Can't go wrong, by the way. Cabriolet or which one?
When I sold my company, I bought a Carrera 4 GTS. Oh. So I always invested every dollar back into the company, and that was the one thing I wanted to buy. So I talked to my wife, and she knew what I was going to do.
Great choice, by the way.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And the other
best
one,
spot you've traveled to?
One place I go back to that I really like is Wailea, Maui.
Oh, wow. Okay,
my wife and I like going there because you can get up in the mountains, you can surf, you can go in the water. Weather's beautiful. If you're a golfer, you can go do that. But that's probably the one beautiful place I've gone back to multiple times.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining, Mark. That will conclude our episode. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, thanks a lot.